on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about the Star Wars Epic Collection, the Newspaper Strips, Volume 1. This is a whole bunch of Star Wars newspaper comics that were published in between Star Wars A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. Some of these stories may have been published after The Empire Strikes Back came out, but I am almost positive that all of these were created before The Empire Strikes Back came out. And I thought this book was fine, not good enough to make me want to buy and read Volume 2. That might be a little bit of a backhanded compliment, but this book mostly confused me because of the presentation. At the very beginning of the book, you have these newspaper comics that are presented in landscape format, like what you would see in a comic strip. If you buy a book of Garfield comics, it's going to be in this format, going long ways, if you will. And the first, 40-ish pages of this book are presented like that. And then it kind of ends a little bit on a cliffhanger. On those stories, C-3PO is telling this massive computer, here's some adventures that Luke Skywalker went on. I was with him on this one adventure, and oh, that reminds me of this thing that Han Solo and Chewbacca went on. And then they met this woman, and she might have been an Imperial spy. And then it just stops, and then it jumps into another story. It completely drops off the woman who might have been an Imperial spy, and then you get pages that look like this, like an actual comic book. And my understanding is these pages were originally a comic strip, and then those panels were cut up and pasted on a page to look like they belonged always in a comic book format. And I believe the very first pages of this book were actually from the Sunday pages of a comic strip, and then these that look like this were actually the daily strips. And then you get a little bit of that, like 100 pages or so, and then you get some more comic strips. Let me see if I can find those. So then you get stuff like this. And once again, it doesn't have anything to do with that woman who may have been an Imperial spy. And then once you get used to reading it like this, then you get some more. So here's one page where everything is like a comic book, sort of. You're reading it vertically, and then you have to turn your book over to read it horizontally. And then after that storyline is finished, then you get another Han Solo story. And it was very choppy. And I think if all of this was collected in a different way, I might have had a more smoother experience. There's a short little batch of strips here that could have been presented as a really short graphic novel. Like a 90-page Han Solo and Chewbacca, they go and do this thing over here. If that had been published by itself, I could have read that and I could have enjoyed it. But then when you have all of these disparate stories thrown together in this book, and then you have some subplots that are dropped unceremoniously and you don't know what happens next, that can be a little frustrating as a reader. For example, at the very beginning of the book, when you have Han Solo meets this woman and C-3PO tells the computer she may or may not have been an Imperial officer, and we don't know what happens with that because none of these other stories ever pick up on that. You get a whole bunch of other stories with either Han and Leia teaming up, or Luke and Leia, or Han and Luke. Very rarely do you get all three of them together in one adventure, which is interesting because it makes it seem like they weren't yet sure at this time if Han Solo was going to be a major part of Star Wars. You go and look at Splinter of the Mind's Eye, where Han Solo was completely removed, Han and Chewie, and you just had Luke and Leia going on an adventure. This makes it seem like they were still a little unsure, what are we going to do with this Han Solo guy? And so you have one story in here where Han reluctantly has to do some more stuff with the rebellion, even though at the end of A New Hope, it makes it seem like he's pretty much thrown his lot in with the rebellion, but then you have some stuff here that makes it seem like, or maybe not, maybe he's not going to be in the next movie, or if he is in the next movie, maybe he won't survive to be in the third movie. We don't know. But it's really interesting getting a look at some of these stories from this time period. There is one here that has Boba Fett, and I don't actually hate Boba Fett here, which is a miracle because while everyone else on the planet thinks that Boba Fett is the bee's knees. I have never cared about Boba Fett. I've never found him to be very interesting, but he's alright in this story. There's a story where Luke kind of gets stranded on this planet, and Boba Fett is trying to find him. Han gets there. There's a whole big thing, and I didn't hate that story. A lot of these stories I didn't hate. If they had just been presented by themselves, separate from all these other stories, I could have read them in isolation and said, that was a really cool adventure that these characters went on. But when you throw it all together, it's very jarring. And maybe that's not a fair criticism to level against all of this, but the presentation could have been prevented. They could have presented all of this in a better format, in my opinion. If you have a whole bunch of Star Wars comic strips that are better read like this, then you need to publish a book that is presented like this. A long and short book that you would read kind of like a Garfield book or a Calvin and Hobbes or whatever. Something like that where you can have like a big Star Wars strip on each page, and I'm not having to hold the book like this and then turn it up like this for a few 30 pages or so, then turn it back like this. I don't want to have to keep doing that. And it's doubly frustrating when you have subplots in some of those storylines and then they are hinted at as being important and then they're dropped. So while I didn't hate this book, I enjoyed it well enough. I don't think that I'm going to read Volume 2 because I have a feeling that Volume 2 is going to be more of the same, where we're going to get some story about C-3PO telling someone something that might be important and then it's never going to be picked up again, and then we'll have to turn the book over this way to read about Luke saving these dinosaur people who are being exploited by the Empire, and then we'll have to turn the book the other way, and I just don't want to do that. So while I didn't hate this book, I know I'm just kind of spinning my wheels at this point. I don't know if I would recommend this unless you are just really curious. If you really want to know what are these pre-Empire Strikes Back Star Wars stories like, then yeah, go ahead and pick this up and give it a go. I would keep your expectations kind of low, and if it bothers you reading the book in different ways, I don't know, that seems like it's a bigger deal than what it actually was to me, but if that kind of thing bothers you, again, I would keep my expectations fairly low. So those are my thoughts on the Star Wars newspaper strips Volume 1. I hope you guys liked this video, and if you did, I will see you guys in the future. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.